Well, last week's episode of the Book of Boba Fett seemed to improve somewhat, if nothing else, in just presentation and whatnot, and seems to be the consensus that that probably should have been the first episode. But then the follow-up vastly improved, so good, because it's really an episode of The Mandalorian. So it was teased, The Mandalorian, in the previous episode when Boba Fett and Fennec were talking about they needed muscle. And you heard the doo-doo theme song. So, of course, no surprise, it's The Mandalorian. I mean, you have the opening scene where you see the silhouette of what looks like a Mandalorian, but it's the Mandalorian. Din Djarin. So, gee, what's he been up to since last season of The Mandalorian, where Luke Skywalker took Grogu away to go be trained as a Jedi? Well, Mandalorian's still making a living, so he had to go pick up a bounty. And boy, I tell you, the opening scene is it's really quite brutal. But done with, you're not really seeing anything gory per se, but well, somewhat. It's like, what the hell? How come they aren't doing this for Boba Fett? You know, I don't know. But anyway, it's like all of a sudden, what show is this? Oh, it's Mandalorian. Because everything was good, the special effects, because some of the special effects seemed to be, some of them would be really good, and some of them seemed really cheap and tawdry, like the Cyber Kids and all that stuff. Ugh, just terrible. And of course, such a breath of fresh air to get off of Tatooine for a while, so you actually go into space, and they have this, I guess, like space station, like structure that's just this giant ring of a city in space. Looks like something you'd probably see more in Star Trek or something like that, certainly in one of the movies anyway, but nevertheless, it worked out. It was a new thing you hadn't seen a lot in Star Wars, but it was an improvement. It was something cool to look at rather than something stupid and cheap and tawdry like the Cyber Kids. So he gets injured in the fight, and he's got to struggle on his way. And then he meets back up with his tribe, which is dwindling. And but they delve more into what the dark saber means for him, and now that he's in possession of it, and what the prophecies concerning it, and what stuff. So it's looking more and more likely that he's going to end up being the ruler of Mandalore. So that's what that's what's teased there, and you get some dark saber action, which is cool, and all of that. So it's just all around pretty good. And then he heads back to Tatooine, which of course we tie it into this is Boba Fett's show, even though he is not in this episode. And so it concludes with Fennec Shand showing up to hire Mandalore or Din Djarin to join up with Boba Fett, and Din Djarin says, I'll do it on the house, because he has some sense of loyalty to Boba Fett after what Boba Fett helping him out in season 2 of Mandalorian. So, but he says, but first I need to pay a visit to a little friend, I think he put it. So it sounds like he's going to go see Grogu. Will they show that? Maybe not. Maybe they'll cover that in his own show when he comes back, as they're jumping around the sequences and stuff here. So, but so there you go. So Mandalorian makes his appearance, and I assume he will be in the next episode as Boba Fett forms his gang to take down the Pikes or what have you that are taking over Tatooine. So there you go. It's very simple, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, like I said, the money, you can see it spent on it with the effects and everything, but a lot of it, the secret of Mandalorian's success was its simplicity. Space cowboy. He has to go on this adventure. They throw in the business of him becoming a father and that sort of thing, but and he's on this journey of adventure and meeting characters that also have to be of some interest, and that's pretty much all it was. And yet it was performed so well, and the presentation well, and as simple as it was, it's still thought out. Whereas Boba Fett, they're just throwing things around, slapping it together, and moving on. So because the biggest thing is Boba Fett's motivation and explanation for why he is the way he is now, and they completely dropped the ball on that. So even with cool episodes like this, it's not enough to save the show overall, in my opinion. I think this is a bad show. They're teasing stuff, and chances are you'll get some cool scenes and even a full episode, which is such is the case with this one, but that's not enough. I think this is a failed project at this point. It's unfortunate because it's completely unnecessary. But I don't know. What the hell's going on over there? You just never know. So the other cool little thing is a nod to the prequels, because Boba has lost his spaceship, so he needs another. He needs a new ride, and so he meets back with what's her name? I forget her, but she's the mechanic woman that he met on Tatooine in his own series, and they get an old classic jalopy from the prequels. And this is going to be his new ride for a while, I guess. He tests it and all that stuff, and it's all cool and stuff. It's it's going backwards, I guess, to some extent, but it's one of those little Easter egg type things. It's a little nod to it. But one of the things about Disney Star Wars was their lack of spaceship design. That certainly the sequel trilogy was just terrible at. But at least with Mandalorian, he had his own ship, which they destroyed stupidly because I'm assuming at some point he'll get another one that's similar, because it's like, well, there's your toy that you could sell. I mean, you can still sell it. I mean, but it's gone, But it was its own, design. Well, at least somebody tried. And some of the concept arts for the sequel trilogy, they had some pretty interesting ideas, but they just didn't follow through on it. I don't know. Anywho, so I'm thinking this will be his ride for the moment, and I'll keep it vague so you can go see the show and see what it is. But I'm pretty sure you probably guessed it by now. But perhaps he'll get back to, because he keeps talking about he wants another Raven ship, and but he just couldn't get one at the moment, so he's going to have to be satisfied with this. And eventually, I'm thinking he'll get one. I guess he'll give it a different paint job or something, and then he'll be back to the races, as it were. So there you go, The Mandalorian. A little pause from Boba Fett to give you. Remember, we did some good stuff with this. It's just to say, because the poor Boba Fett, this character that was always mysterious but had a lot of popularity, even though he was briefly in the original trilogy. And of course, there's been comic books and novels and all that sort of stuff later. And all that stuff expanded on him, but to finally get his own show and everything, and look what they did with him, and a lot of this had to do with their plans for a movie, and that fell apart, and for whatever reason they decided to go with a brand new character. At the time, I thought it was because of the personality difference between the two, to make a more heroic character. So he's a new one, so he's not as rough and nasty as Boba Fett was, even though they're in the same trade, and so it worked. You didn't really have to explain it, even though they did. They went to what the connection. You could have done the same thing with Boba Fett. They're both orphans, more or less, and that they would have some sort of sympathy for Baby Yoda and all that. And that whole storyline kind of sort of could have worked, but you would have had to work on Boba a little more to make him, more nicer, if you will, a kinder, gentler Boba. But for his own show, and to set it up right after he escapes the Sarlacc pit, boy, you really needed to come up with a narrative to explain that, and they just didn't. That was lazy on their part. But at this point, here's Boba being completely outshined by his replacement, the substitute Boba. It's just kind of sad. And they just... Because even with the situation as it is, if he just crafted a narrative as to what makes him sympathetic for the Sand People and stuff. And that's all you had to do. It's all you had to do. And they didn't do it. Astounding, really. But that's just too bad. Too bad. But yeah, Mandalorian kicks ass, doesn't he? So anyway, there you go. Best Boba Fett episode ever. Just doesn't have any Boba Fett in it. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.